All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the fourth part of the show, we're going to now get into talking about the press conferences from yesterday. We had a handful of head coaches meet with the media. Pete Carroll, Brian Schottenheimer, Liam Coen, Aaron Glenn. I did watch. Some of them were longer than others. I did mainly focus on Aaron Glenn and what he had to say. Actually, the biggest takeaway one of the biggest takeaways from Aaron Glenn's press conference is they did bring up Aaron Rodgers. He did say in the press conference that, they've been in communication with Rodgers and he will be talked about. But the big thing for them is they're going to take a long look at this roster. And they're going to determine whether or not Aaron Rodgers fits this. And the other thing, too, is you got to see if Aaron Rodgers is willing to, play under this new regime and, if he wants to play in general. So, we'll see how it goes. But, there were those reports out there that Aaron Glenn wants to keep Aaron Rodgers. So, we'll see what ultimately ends up happening. But I thought it was interesting that he did bring that up. Because I don't believe anybody... Now, the media did ask him follow-up questions after he brought up Rodgers, but I don't believe... I don't think anybody asked him a question on Rodgers, and that's why he brought it up. He brought it up on his own. Because he knows that is one of the biggest things that people want to know, is do they want to bring back Aaron Rodgers? And we'll see. Time will tell. But I thought that was interesting. But yeah, listen. I'm a guy that, I've fallen for it for certain press conferences. Like Joe Judge's press conference, he knocked it out of the park. And I thought, all right, this is what we want to hear. Because, when you saw McAdoo's press conference, as a Giant fan, you saw McAdoo's press conference and Shermer's press conference, you were like, eh. But with Joe Judge, you were like, all right, I like what this guy has to say. Let's see what he can do. And we thought initially that he could be the guy, but quickly we found out he was not. So, look, Aaron Glenn spoke very well. Spoke very well at his press conference yesterday. Said all the right things, and, he just talked about, the journey that he was on and how he wanted this job. This is all he wanted. This is the dream job, and, to come back to the Jets and to help, put this team back in a better spot, that means something to him. You could tell that. And you could tell that he's going to be a motivator. And, he comes from a team, most recently with the Lions. They have built up a great culture over there. And you would hope, if you're a Jet fan, that he could bring that culture over to the Jets. And, like I said, steer this team in the right direction. But, again, press conference is one thing. Now you got to go out there and show it on the field. The only way this is going to work is if your team gets you the results that you desire on the field. And we'll see. He's got a defensive background, which is similar to, past coaches, the one that the Jets just had in Robert Saleh. So, we'll see. But Aaron Glenn also really worked his way up. So, it's going to be different. And, like I said, we'll see if they end up bringing back Rodgers. So, you had that. Also got to watch a little bit of Pete Carroll's press conference. Look, Pete Carroll was the right guy. And he talked about how Tom Brady really had, an influence. That was something the media asked him about, how much influence Tom Brady had on bringing in Pete Carroll. And Pete Carroll said that, maybe Brady wasn't always around, obviously, because, he's preoccupied with, calling the playoff games here. But he has an impact. And, he also talked about how, himself and the GM, they're going to also lean on Brady because, Tom Brady, did a lot of winning, and Tom Brady knows football. Now, obviously, this is a different kind of area with him being, a part-time owner. But, I mean, it's Tom Brady. So I think you definitely will take into consideration, maybe some things that he has to say. Or a lot of the things he has to say. But also it's funny how Marshawn Lynch, he was present at the press conference. And, he yelled out Raiders. He did the Raiders, kind of like what Chris Bertman does. He yelled that out while Pete Carroll was talking. But Pete Carroll loves to coach. And he said he had a great year away from football. He talked about he would go to, some of his grandson's games, his son's games, because they're all in football. They're all involved. They're coaching and things like that. So it's not like Pete Carroll just sat back and put his feet up and said, yeah, I'm not going to do anything while I'm away. Pete Carroll wants to keep coaching. And, he talked about how, it took some time for, he said past programs that he worked with. It took some time for them to build things up. He said, they want immediate results here. So the thing is, I mean, I just love how stacked the AFC West is with coaches. I mean, because you have Harbaugh, Pete Carroll now, Sean Payton, Andy Reid. You got all these guys there now in this division. It's awesome. It's just I want to see now the Raiders build up their team, because you had 3 of the 4 make the playoffs. Now the Raiders, they want to be a part of that. And, like I said yesterday, or during this week, yesterday, you got some players to build around, but you need to figure out the quarterback. And could they go out and get a veteran? What's their plan of attack here? We'll have to find out. But look, I love the hire for the Raiders. Pete Carroll is really going to inject some energy into this team, something that they've needed. I was hoping that Antonio Pierce was going to be that guy. It didn't turn out that way. Hopefully Pete Carroll is the guy. And I would love to know, anyone watching this as a Raiders fan, how do you feel about this hire? Because, if I'm a Raiders fan, I'd be ecstatic over this. Pete Carroll will get the best out of his teams. So we'll see. Also, there were some, cringe moments, I'll call it, with some of the press conference. Well, really one of them. And that was, I know a lot of people are talking about Liam Coen and his Duval chant. How that was kind of cringe. But it is what it is. Look, we've seen many different kinds of press conferences over the years where, some of them could be too extreme. Some of them not so much. I'll always bring up the contrast between Dan Campbell's press conference and Nick Sirianni's press conference. Like, Dan Campbell's was really extreme. Nick Sirianni, you were like scratching your head saying, what is he talking about? But guess what? Nick Sirianni is coaching in his second Super Bowl, and Dan Campbell is coming off of a year where the Lions had the best regular season in their franchise. So they're doing something right. And Liam Coen got a lot out of Baker Mayfield in 2024. So we'll see what he does with Trevor Lawrence. This could end up being a good hire, or it could end up being a disaster. We'll have to see. And then also, I know some Cowboys fans like what they heard out of Ryan Schottenheimer, because, he talked about how, because with the Cowboys, they lack motion during their plays. So he did bring that up. So that was something that, Cowboys fans want to hear now. They got to see that be executed in games. But, and Jerry Jones actually got emotional during the press conference too. I guess he's trying to, fans probably don't want to hear it. But, look, Jerry wanted to hire one of his guys. I mean, we know this. And, it was either going to be him, it was going to be Kellen Moore, maybe Jason Witten. It wasn't going to be a splash hire. But we'll see what happens now with the healthy Dak Prescott. The Cowboys, they went 7-10. With Dak Prescott, you hope they win more games. Healthy. But like I said, only time will tell. But yeah, so that's kind of like my overall impression on the press conferences. Let me know what you guys think, though. What were some of your takeaways from them? Let me know in the comments. So we're going to take our final break of the show now. And then when we come back, we'll talk about the Steelers quarterback situation. Should they stick with Justin Fields or Russell Wilson? We'll talk about that. So for one final time today, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.